So, this song is a song I wrote when I was about 15 years old. The song is called Africa, and I wrote the song when I was very confused in my life. I didn't have a clear understanding of where I came from, and that journey was a very difficult one, being someone who was racially ambiguous. You know, you could look at me and not really say who I am, and when I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't really define who I was based off of how I looked. So my roots were very important to me, and my mother was very good at making sure I knew where I came from. But it's difficult to have that conflict of the world telling you you're something that you know that you're not. But when it's reinforced every day, it kind of makes you want to write a song about it. So when I perform this song, I tell people it took me 400 years to write. All right. Can you hear the guitar in the back?
Yes.
We'll make it work. I'm in a state of all alone. I've been so far along this road. I've seen every episode, and honestly it's getting old. I don't know where this all could go, 'cause where I go it's always cold. It's so hard to feel when we're so far apart. I can't feel my hands, and I can't feel my heart, but the beat goes on. Yes, the beat stays strong, 'cause I'm still loving you, I'm still loving on. Oh, what does it take to drive a man insane? I'll be driving till the day I see your face again. What does it take to turn this world around? I would make the whole earth dizzy just to know that you still miss me. You know I've seen my share of things. It seems that as the world gets older, if I make it I get colder. I never relied on these dreams, 'cause when I'm sleeping's when I'm sober, and this nightmare's far from over. I ain't living right when you ain't by my side, and I can't feel my light when you ain't in my sight. But the beat goes on. Yes, that beat stays strong, 'cause I'm still loving you, I'm still loving on. Oh, what does it take to drive a man insane? I'll be driving till the day I see your face again. What does it take to turn this world around? I would make the whole earth dizzy just to know that you still miss me. You know I'll never let you fade away. I'll be up on and die another day. I promise you our love will find a way. But until the day I see your face again, this love can never end, no. Oh, what does it take to drive a man insane? I'll be driving till the day I see your face again. What does it take to turn this world around? I would make the whole earth dizzy just to know that you still miss me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valentina and I am a YUIR intern. I attended my first Freedom School in the summer of 2011. After 2 weeks of learning about racism and poverty, I wanted to learn more, so I joined Youth Unto an Institutionalized Racism, or as we say, YUIR. YUIR is a youth-focused, but also multi-generational program that develops global leaders and focuses on undoing institutionalized racism. At Freedom School, we develop an understanding of institutionalized racism, poverty, the prison industrial complex, and the history of people of color organizing for change in Seattle. At YUIR, as we continue to learn, we share what we've learned with our families and our community. We meet every Thursday from October to June and are supported and taught by Marcel Purnell, Min Nguyen, and many other supportive and loving adults. YUIR has been active in Seattle since 1999 and is sponsored by the American Sprint Service Committee and the People's Institute Northwest. I want to share a short story about YUIR and how we seek to undo anti-racist work. There once was a woman. She went to a river to meditate and escape the drama of living in the city. While she was sitting at the edge of the river, she saw a baby floating on the river. And so she jumped in and saved the baby. But then she saw more babies flowing down the river. And so she continued to jump in. "Help!" she cried out. The people nearby the river came and started helping. Finally someone said, "Wait, let's go to the mouth of the river and see why these babies are coming down." YUIR seeks to undo institutionalized racism by addressing the mouth of the river and understanding why so many of our friends and peers are being failed by the school system, why so many youth of color are being incarcerated, and why so many youth and families are living in poverty. Racism doesn't just happen interpersonally, but it is integrated into the different systems and structures we interact with. Take the education system, for example. Students of color are set up not to do as well as their white counterparts. Students of color, especially Latinos, Natives, and Blacks, are kicked out of class, disciplined more harshly, and not taught the history of their ancestors and their leaders. While white students are placed into advanced placement classes and other special programs to help them in college so that they can be successful throughout their whole lives. This has got to stop. This failure of schools opens up a direct track to the prison system. This year, YUIR formed a new committee called EPIC, which stands for Undoing and the Prison Industrial Complex. During EPIC, we are currently focusing on getting information about the new youth jail that is supposed to be built in 2015 and organizing and advocating for some alternatives of the funding that we can propose to King County political leaders and others in charge of the construction of the jail. During YUIR this year, we went and trained other youth in Skyway on their rights with the police. This upcoming year, we'll be advocating for Know Your Rights to happen in every school and community centers. This will help our youth, especially our youth of color, to avoid negative experiences with the criminal justice system. YUIR leaders and organizers believe that racism is a sickness that manifests self-hatred, early death, poverty, and high incarceration rates. Racism is a barrier that prevents us from organizing together to transform our society. Even though it has been well over 150 years since slavery ended, Black people still have not healed. According to Global Grind, Black homicide rates are 6 times higher than white homicide rates. One of the reasons for these homicide rates is self-hatred due to the internalized oppression, a root of racism. Black people come in all shapes, sizes, and shades. It doesn't matter that some of us are lighter or darker than the other. As people, because the system classifies us all as black, it treats us as second-class citizens. As people of color, we need to heal the internal pain we all share and understand how our freedom will come as we work to liberate our minds. We need to love ourselves, celebrate our strengths and similarities, and appreciate our differences, so that we can finally come together and heal. We are powerful, despite what the system says. We need to wake up and realize that we do not have to accept what the system continues to put us through as people of color. YUIR is about anti-racist social change, and we invite you to join us and organize to build a movement. Thank you.
Andrea Santana Ufred, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Washington. I've been working with youth undoing institutional racism for a year now, and during this last year, I've learned a lot, and my eyes have been opened to a wide range of issues that I once knew very little about. Yet, what has most shocked me has been the depth and breadth of the prison industrial complex. Even though I'm Puerto Rican, I am not usually the victim of discrimination. My light skin and the fact that most people fail to detect my Spanish accent makes it so that I am not usually identified as Latina. I'm a young woman from a privileged background, not the norm for most Latinos in this country. I've always felt confident that police officers and that the criminal justice system as a whole are looking out for my best interests. I now know that this is not the case for most people of color. For many, the criminal justice system is something to be feared, and rightly so. Critical resistance defines the prison industrial complex, and remember this definition for later, as the overlapping interests of government and industry that use surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems. The portion of this definition that refers to the interests of government addresses political gains made for tough-on-crime politicians through the establishment of prisons and unyielding policies. The portion of this definition that refers to the interests of industry addresses the contractors that benefit from the construction and maintenance of prisons, as well as the companies that profit from prison labor. This definition highlights that certain industries are benefiting from imprisoning people. The people that benefit from the prison industrial complex are the same people who are benefiting from privileges granted by our American society based on sex, race, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, and ability. And these people are not the ones being locked up, or who are seeing their friends and family locked up. Their communities torn by an unjust system. Critical resistance, the group from which we drew our definition of the prison industrial complex, hopes that people acknowledge that the prison industrial complex was not established with the sole intention of keeping communities safe. There is a mistaken underlying attitude in our criminal justice system today, which is personified in what President Richard Nixon once said. You have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appearing to. And we did. Our criminal justice system has since established policies that explicitly target communities of color. We see the same brand of discrimination in schools. The prison industrial complex has become so intertwined in American society that even our schools are experiencing its effects, both directly and indirectly. Indirectly, by not providing the materials, staff, and funding necessary to ensure the success of all students. Directly, by actually bringing police officers into school, carrying out arrests during class, and criminalizing youth misbehavior. And so, our country has constructed a school-to-prison pipeline that effectively tracks youth out of schools and into prisons. But schools should not be in the business of putting people in cages. industrial complex out of schools because schools are the biggest part of a young person's life, critical in shaping not only how they view themselves, but how they view their place in society. It is where young people first encounter authority figures. By integrating the prison industrial complex into schools, young people are being provided with a valid reason to not trust authority figures. The fact that most schools have a police officer on the premises sends a clear message to youth. You are not trusted, and any mistake you make will not go unpunished. How can students be expected to be successful if they are being sent this message both inside and outside of school? Imagine the burden of knowing so little is expected of you, simply based on your color of your skin, your cultural background, the way you speak or dress. Seattle is so proud of its quote-unquote diverse, all-inclusive schools. People have talked about diversity so they wouldn't have to talk about the real underlying issue, racism. We have convinced ourselves so thoroughly of our progressivism that many were blind and remain blind to the fact that our disciplinary policies have allowed racism to run rampant. Not all youth are being provided with an environment where they can easily discover and harness their abilities. Students, and primarily students of color, are being driven out of schools by a system that is not providing them with relevant life tools and not challenging their bright minds. In turn, leading to boredom, increasing the search for an outlet, and ultimately creating a situation where these young people are more likely to misbehave or to find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. And many times, the end result is imprisonment. Once a young person falls into this vicious cycle, it is very difficult to escape. Essentially, the American education and criminal justice system are failing our young people, even though these are the systems that should be looking out for their best interests. This is the reality, and just because we weren't talking about it doesn't mean it isn't there. I want to leave you all with a sense of how unfair the prison industrial complex is. The school-to-prison pipeline is the embodiment of the prison industrial complex in the American education system. These institutions are stopping youth from realizing their full potential. Young people can be a powerful force, as demonstrated by our being here today, speaking with you all about complex issues and difficult experiences. Let's leave today with an urgency and a sense of responsibility to harness this power and build a movement for the betterment of our society.
Going through Freedom School has changed my outlook on society. It's not that I failed to recognize racism as a problem before. At Freedom School, I had the opportunity to see how racism is integrated into every aspect of our lives. I've learned that white privilege does not need to be white guilt. It needs to be acknowledged in a white community. As we know, the Seattle Public School District doesn't have a great track record in neighborhoods of color. Going through the public school system as a white female, I've had nothing but good experiences. Looking deeper, I realized that the school system was always working for me. I was supposed to think that my experience was great, and I assumed everybody felt the same. I was a white student who'd been taught to thrive on the oppression of colored students. I was taught to accept that students of color were treated differently from white students, and in Seattle Public School, this seemed normal. I've never been suspended. I was given detention for casual incidents, and when I didn't show up, that was the end of it. That's not true for my friends of color. They received further punishment, starting with in-school suspension and escalating from there. Although we as white people receive privileges from systemic racism every day, ultimately this comes at a cost. It causes a separation between whites and communities of color. Racism divides us along class lines by color. This oppression and this divide of power and love closes any opportunity to start a poor people's movement that could benefit people of all races. Up until a month ago, I hadn't realized how important that movement could be in changing the current reality of the school-to-prison pipeline. It is not coincidental that 1 in 3 black men between 20 and 29 live under correctional supervision. We know that for every incarcerated black man, there's a white man out there doing the same thing without being criminalized for it. Many white people who I've come across are in denial that racism has any impact on their own life. They may know it's a problem. For people of color, but they're in denial that they've contributed to racism in any way. Looking back on my experiences, I can see how racism has benefited me in so many aspects of my life, even though I didn't realize it until now. I see so many young white people doing easy charity work for college applications, thinking that this is the way to make a difference, but they don't fully understand how oppression impacts the lives of the people they're working with. Without understanding these issues, well-meaning white people think that they're benefiting communities of color, but they may be perpetuating the problem without realizing their impact. It's what we as white people are taught to do. We're raised to not look for the source of the problem, so how can we try to help and fix it until we better understand what we're working to fix and how white people contribute to the problem? I'm gay and half of the country doesn't accept me. I have faced a form of discrimination firsthand, but I do not know what it's like to face racial oppression, and I never will. I can hide who I am. I can hide the part of myself that's oppressed, but I can't hide the color of my skin. And why would I want to? I don't have to fear for my life on my walk to the grocery store in broad daylight. And I don't get pulled over when I drive 5 miles over the speed limit. I don't get racially profiled as a criminal, uneducated, poor, or unmanageable. All you have to do is open your eyes. Systemic racism and white privilege are all around you. Many of us have been taught to see the world through a lens where they don't exist, but that's not reality, it's a point of view. White people need to stop blaming everyone else and realize that racism is a problem that white people must deal with. We have many conversations in our society about the legacy of slavery and attempted genocide of Native Americans, but rarely do we talk about the fact that it was our ancestors who stole human beings from Africa. We as white people attempted genocide against natives. We as white people committed lynchings of black men and women. We as white people raped, pillaged, and stole this land. And today, we as white people sit back and watch our prisons filling up with people of color, our school systems failing students of color, and we accept as normal that more people of color live in poverty. If we are ever to be full members of the family of mankind, then we as white people must take responsibility for our history and take action today. Real action to address the racism in our society that we benefit from. Thank you.
I'm going to share a letter from our brother Kamanti Carter, who is currently doing a life sentence in the Washington State prison system. It is important for us to bring the voices of those who can't be with us here today. When I tried to wrap my mind around any plausible solutions to reverse the negative effects of the cradle to prison pipeline, it wanders back in time to when I was a troubled youth running the streets of Tacoma. I look back to all the decisions I made during my troubled life, and I ask myself how many of those irrational decisions, including the one I am currently serving a life sentence for, were influenced by poverty. The answer I come up with is all of them. To young struggling kids, poverty is more than a number that determines social status or family income. Poverty is a crippling stigma that represents everything undesirable about life. Poverty is synonymous with being poor, dumb, disgusting, untrustworthy, lazy, worthless, ugly, helpless, and dangerous. Everything a child tries desperately to separate themselves from. But when children begin to digest this poison, it begins to slowly kill their spirit. Their dreams and the brightness of the future begin to dim and fade away. So with a cloudy outlook on the future, not many children are willing to work towards any abstract goals because their dismantled imagination only allows them to believe in things that can only be touched by their hands. Every approach taken must be direct and expectations must be practical because this is an issue that cannot be recreated away with the newest equipment at the local Boys and Girls Club or solved by new teachers and computers in old rundown schools. These temporary band-aids will not alleviate the social pressures associated with poverty. Solutions, when it comes to youth, has been focused on improving the decision-making skills and the confidence of these children so they don't end up placing themselves in desperate situations that expose them to the landmines of the prison pipeline and destroy any chance they have at living a normal life. My idea for reasonable solutions is geared toward making the youth a part of the movement that is rebuilding our businesses, institutions, and organizations. Youth are not helpless observers. They play a very intricate part in our community's underground economy. So their worth must be twice as valuable in its growth and development. This is the process they must be part of if we want to challenge their belief system, which will restructure their values. We must love them through all their transgressions and nurture them for the betterment of the future. We have to be willing to invest in our youth more than the gangs or the street corners ever have, because they have and always will remain our competition when it comes to the lives of our children. And so far, we have been outworked every step of the way. Our method must change and our energy needs to reflect our attitudes if we are sincere about this organizing work. So our networks must expand and our relationships must improve because this problem is too big for any one organization to face alone. This needs to be a community effort because it is a community problem and the lives that are being destroyed and are our community's children. So if you consider yourself an active organizer and you find yourself having more meetings about the youth without the youth being present, you may be doing more harm than good. They are the ones impacted, so consider their valuable presence because it may just change the way you approach your work altogether. Written by Kamanti Carter.
You want to say something?